First, we have our consent agenda. Approve the October 4th minutes. Approve the 2023 medical examiner contract. Approve final plat for Sunset Bay Paradise. Approve submittal of the draft of solid waste management plan to the MPCA. Approve contract for Lake Zumbro Slope Improvement Project. Approve transfer of a portion of County Road 105 to Kalmar Township. Revoke and reestablish county highway designation of County Road 105. Vacate a section of County Road 105. Support the Corridors of Commerce proposal for CSAH 44 and Trunk Highway 14 interchange. 2023 Health and Environmental Lab fees. And Aware UCare 21-22 County and Tribe Grant.
Move approval.
I just got a question, if we can.
We'll give you a second. We'll
Yeah,
pull it
second.
Up. Okay. Now we have a point you want to talk about?
Yeah, what's going on with 105?
Somebody, here we go.
Your band's coming out.
Public Works anymore, I don't know what's going on. 105 is a back road out.
Just show up uninvited anyway.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Ben Johnson, Olmsted County Public Works. It's a part of our CASA 4 and County Road 105 project. So when we realign 105, we're going to vacate that old right-of-way.
Oh, the old one down by Oxbow?
Exactly.
Yeah, oh,
Yep.
okay,
And then
gotcha.
turn a piece of that back to Kalmar
Kalmar.
Township and then just reestablishing
You're
it.
gonna keep that road going, the old 105?
Just to access those two parcels.
Oh, just the one where the creamery used to, okay, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
It dead ends.
All right. Any others? All right. We got motion second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. All right. Regular agenda. Discussion decision items. Redo draft of 2023 countywide scorecard. Who's talking?
Who's up?
Trying to deliver some gloves. That was on the chair there.
Do you have handouts for us?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Deborah Ertmiller with Policy Analysis and Communications. I'm actually here today to, really on behalf of the executive management team, just with the
Excuse me, could
2023
you pull the
countywide
microphone a little
scorecard.
closer to you, please?
Little
Closer
closer.
to you?
Closer even?
Yeah, thank you.
How's that?
It's better.
Better.
Okay, good. Thank you. I am not part of the executive management team, but as I think you know, Policy Analysis and Communications works with the executive management team on this countywide scorecard each year. So I will, for simplicity's sake, I will present today, but then ask if anyone from executive management team wants to contribute. Yes, Commissioner Beer.
My ears don't work as fast as your mouth works. Okay, just slow her down just a little bit for this old
Okay.
guy.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Yeah, I think it might. I need to, right. The gloves.
Deep.
Okay, here we go. All right.
I can't listen that fast.
So we have been making changes to the scorecard for the last couple of years after we first introduced this format. And I think we're getting closer to having a stable set of measures that will be consistent over time. Of course, that helps us provide, it helps us get trend data if we can see how we're doing on the same measures each year. And then as new measures are implemented, when it's appropriate to help us gather more information. So an example of this is, that the resident survey occurred earlier this year. Last year we had the employee engagement survey, but each of those surveys only occurs every few years. And so then we have no new information in those in-between years. So some of what you'll see today is that we're proposing some new measures that will happen in the interim years between those larger surveys. So digging right into the balanced scorecard, as you'll recall, there are 4 perspectives, they're called in the balanced scorecard. So the first one is resident quality of life. And in this particular perspective, we have 3 measures this year, and they were all part of the resident survey. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail because this was covered earlier this year, but we had measures related to resident satisfaction with county services, resident quality of life, and then resident rating of Olmsted County's performance. And we had set, some more aggressive targets to see increases in each of those areas, and we did not meet those goals, although the resident quality of life actually stayed the same. And so again, this is one where we don't have any interim data, and so we're proposing a new measure for 2023. What we would like to do is start to standardize and aggregate some of the information we get from customer satisfaction surveys around the county. So many of our programs and services already have customer satisfaction surveys, but we don't have any way of looking at that across the whole county to kind of give us an overview of how we're doing. So we'd like to, we won't actually have, we're going to start with the departments or programs and services that already have surveys. We won't necessarily add new ones in 2023. But the first step will be to choose the themes that we want to have standardized questions. And so those are listed on the slides. These have been proposed to executive management team, and there's another meeting on that topic coming up. But the themes are basically, did you feel respected as a resident or customer or client? Were your needs met? How can we do better? And then some standardized demographics so that everyone is collecting the same type of information, which helps us, again, to compare across our programs and services. A couple of just quick notes on this. Of course, customers or clients are never required to answer the survey, so it's always optional. And also that, again, the particular questions that are asked in the themes might vary a little bit from program and service area. So we're not dictating exactly what you have to ask. It's just within these themes. Mr. Chair, Commissioner
Not the
Beer
chair.
has a question.
No, I'm not the chair anymore. But how do we respect? How do you measure respect? And the reason I ask that is if the sheriff, he has one of his deputies arrest somebody, they may not feel respected even though they are getting respect. People that come in and question their tax value, they're paying their taxes this week, a lot of them come in and they may not be happy and they not. So how you measure respect, to me, is very subjective versus objective. And so we need to be, in my opinion, we need to be a little careful there because people may feel disrespected, but our staff, in my term, 20 years here, generally we treat people pretty respectful. Generally, so that's just my 2 cents.
I think Heidi'd like to speak to this too.
Can I just add something to this point? I think Commissioner Beer is bringing up a good point that many of our services are not voluntary, right? People are here not because they chose to be. However, there is still a way to measure whether a person feels respected even within that circumstance. So I think particularly of DFO has done a really nice job of asking questions about respect. How did they feel? How did the clients, we're going to call them clients, but it's not optional, right? Because these are people who are here on probation, and we have a survey, DFO developed a survey that asks specifically about respect. I'm going to look at James to make sure I'm saying it right.
Yeah, it's probably been 4 years or so. They've developed an effective alliance survey that they were doing on an annual basis to try to measure the respect or the relationship that probation has with their probation officer.
And they got very high numbers, if I remember right.
Yeah, I think we were all pleasantly surprised. We'd be happy to share that with the board if they'd
Yep.
like to see some.
No, that'd be good. You know what I'm saying, though. I mean, people.
Absolutely. You have an excellent point, and I just want to make sure you know, yep, we are on that. And also it was a little bit to my surprise, too, that it worked as well as it did. But people, I think, appreciate being asked, even being asked. Yep, they're not here voluntarily, but they still want to be treated with respect, and that makes a difference to all of our programs. So.
Thank you.
Thank you, Heidi. Yes, I agree. The DFL corrections was the example I was going to give too, where I've seen that data. Not recently, but yes, it has been very good in the past. But it is a perception question, absolutely. Number two, were your needs met is potentially also a subjective or it's a perception question. We might think, well, we've done what we can do for you and the need was met, and they may or may not feel that way. So these are satisfaction questions. Absolutely. I did want to mention just briefly that this will be new for some of our departments and teams, and so the PAC team is going to be offering a survey training in early November for employees, and will provide support throughout 2023 as we're working through this process, because it is just, these are going to be new questions, and that design aspect is very important as well. Commissioner Kazich.
This is probably a kind of a personal quirk, but on surveys, increasingly there's these, when you have the standard demographic data collection, sometimes I feel like it is almost intrusive based on the variety and the expanding list of questions that are asked about age, income, ethnicity, gender identity, where you live, income, and it just feels and sometimes for me it's a barrier to answering, because I'm sort of like, am I going to be dismissed based on any one of those factors? And I kind of understand why it's needed to have a reliable survey, but another part of me is like, I'm resistant. So then that makes me think that I'm probably not the only one, and as a result, some people don't even complete the survey. So I'm just observing that this is a sensitive point, that is, if we're going to be developing standardized questions, that there may be a need to be very sensitive to how detailed the demographic data collection is and the impact it has on participation and response.
Yes, I would like to add to that, because there are questions that people don't want to answer, and some of these things won't let you get to the next point unless you answer every question. So I'm wondering if there should not be an option about, I don't care to answer this, just because they don't want to. But not that it shouldn't impede you from finishing the rest of the survey because you don't want to say how old you are, or don't think it's anyone's anyone's. No one should know what you make, or whatever your sense of privacy is. So I think that should be written in, that if you don't care to answer, it still won't keep you from finishing the rest of the survey.
Yeah, Mr. Chair and Commissioners, thank you very much. I appreciate those comments. I agree with you. We are not going to standardize or dictate exactly the type number of demographic questions. It's more the standardization within them. So if you're going to ask about race and ethnicity, for example, that we're all using the same definition so that we can actually compare the information. So it's more of a simplification that way, not necessarily that we're going to collect more and more and more in every single survey. And we would put it at the end so that you're not prohibited from, you can skip questions, you don't have to answer them, and you would not be prohibited from getting to the next questions. But this is countywide, and so I really appreciate these comments, because that's part of the training and part of the procedures that we need to make sure we can uphold wherever we're implementing surveys.
I actually think it's confusing about race right now, how to identify yourself with the race. And I've seen people just write in human, that there isn't such a thing as race. And so that's an interesting demographic piece of information to collect. How do people think about themselves?
Absolutely, agreed. Okay, so that is the first perspective. The second perspective is our financial stewardship perspective. We're very slow here today. There we go. So there will be, we're not proposing any changes to the three measures under financial stewardship. So these are cash balance as a percent of operating revenues, unrestricted fund balance as a percent of operating revenues, and then our levy ranking per capita. In terms of 2022, the first two are still in progress. We won't, of course, have the final information until we get past year end for those. The levy ranking per capita, this one I find a little confusing, the way that it's measured. So it's measured as number one is the lowest levy per capita of the 87 counties. So in 2022, our target is to be in the lower half of counties, which means we would be between number 1 and number 43. And you'll see that our goal was met because we ranked as 30th for this year among the 87 counties. So it's just specific to Minnesota. Our third balanced scorecard perspective is internal processes. Here we have, again, currently 3 measures. The first one is the data collection diversity. This, again, related back to the resident survey, and we had a goal to try and increase the percent of non-white residents who were answering the survey. We did increase it, but we did not meet our goal. The next 2, countywide employee communications and the internal customer service satisfaction or efficacy, those 2, again, will continue, so those are in progress. I don't have, we'll have updated data on the last one because it's a rolling survey, so our target is about 90% for all the internal services departments to meet the needs of our internal customers. The middle one, the countywide employee communications survey, that will come out in November, and then we'll have updated data. So in 2023, our proposal is for the data collection diversity, that's the piece about the demographics we just talked about in the customer service surveys. And then we'd like to add one more new measure, which would be adding milestones around the joint study recommendations. So this would be things like, did we assign the recommendations to the appropriate department or team and the board committee? Did we have a communications plan for the implementation process? Do we have the accountability board? So not outcomes or specific deliverables from any of the recommendations, but just are we actually meeting the milestones that we set out for reviewing the recommendations?
That's my question, is if we have accepted the report, but we have not necessarily agreed to all of them. So is this board or the incoming board going to, will the new measures be reflective of what this board or the incoming board approves or accepts?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Cascaden, I would say it's more about just milestones of the project management. So more, did we take that step to bring those recommendations to the appropriate board committees and to the departments to propose next steps? Did we do an inventory of what we're already doing for each of the recommendations? So really it's more behind the scenes. Are we taking the next steps to figure out what to do with the recommendations rather than reporting on any specific recommendations? For 2023. I'll pause there, see if Heidi or anyone else has comments. Okay, and then our fourth and final balanced scorecard perspective is organizational capacity. This one, again, we have 4 measures and we would continue with all 4 of these in 2023. The first 2 relate to employee turnover. One includes retirement and the next one excludes retirement. So for these, we have the year to date, so approximately end of September data. The first one, our target is about 8 to 12% for turnover, including retirements, and we're at about 9%. The second one excludes retirements that have happened there. The target is fewer than 10% for turnover, and we are at about 7% so far year to date. The third one is the staff race and ethnicity as representative of our community. Here, our target or goal for 2022 is 10%, and we are currently at about 10.25%.
So the first 2 are goals we want to be less than our goal.
So the first 2, the employee turnover, including retirements, the 2022 target there says 12%. It's actually really a range. It's about 8 to 12%. So some employee turnover is expected and helpful, and so it's not a 0% turnover. So our goal is 8 to 12, and we're at 9%.
Okay.
What you're asking?
So if we have less than 8 to 12, what do we gather from that?
Just potentially that people are staying, but not necessarily all performing as they should be, or that just we're not seeing, or it's a measure of the economy. There's no jobs to go to. I mean, it just can be a measure of several different things. I don't know that it would immediately trigger any action steps, but it's more of just a monitoring of are we seeing healthy turnover.
It'd be more concerning if we exceeded our 8 to 12%, that we say, boy, we're losing people left and right, something's wrong.
Right, significant turnover.
Mr. Chair.
Is Julian here?
I just want to make sure I'm tracking.
Yeah.
These are countywide goals, but for each of these, for these and the other things you've already shown us, will there be departmental measures against the countywide goals?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Cascaden, yes and no. Do have a page on that. So some of them, yes, and some
Okay.
of them, no.
All right.
I'll get to that
I'll
in
wait.
just a minute. Okay, thank you. And then the last one is employee engagement. So as I mentioned, the survey was last done last fall in November of 2021. And so we had one particular question that we called out, that's the 73%. And this was the employees who agreed or strongly agreed that I have opportunities to grow in my department or the county. So that is a particular question that each department is supposed to be taking steps and developing action plans to improve the answer to the response agreed and strongly agreed to that question. But again, because we won't ask the employee engagement survey again until 2024, we don't really have a lot of feedback about how we're doing. So Human Resources is going to conduct what's called a pulse survey, so where you just have one or two very quick questions that you ask in 2023 to give us a sense of how we're doing on that particular question. So to Commissioner Cascaden's question, these are the measures that will cascade from the countywide to all departments. So again, the consistent customer survey data, not all departments have those, and so if they don't, it won't be applicable. But any that do, we will want them to participate fully in that. We have property tax levy as a percent of actual revenues. This is a financial measure that has cascaded to all departments that finance would like to work with us to track. And then the employee race and ethnicity and the employee engagement also cascade to each department. Certainly, each department can look at things like the turnover rate at the department level as well by working with HR, but that one is not necessarily on everyone's scorecard.
The financial measure, so some departments are very reliant on property tax levy and other departments are not. So I don't understand I don't understand this measure. I mean, it's just reporting out then how much of a, if you think about Health and Human Services and all the various
Right.
budget line items they have and the opportunity to apply for grants versus property records that doesn't have that opportunity. So I'm not following why finance needs this.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Cascaden, my understanding is that it is a similar type of monitoring measure just to see what the trends are over time, if there are consistent places where we're using reserves more than we might expect, just looking overall at not setting targets around this, but just more of a monitoring measure for departments and for finance. So we work with each of our controllers to monitor this each year. Rather than taking specific action steps, it's more of a monitoring.
Still feels like it fits in finance reporting rather than benchmarking, but I mean, okay.
For instance, let me try. PRL, you brought up as an example. They charge fees. So how much is levy? How much is fees? What's the revenue? It's a reasonable comparison to look at.
So they're wanting to know that, but I'm not sure how you set targets. I mean, isn't this performance measures against targets?
I was just gonna add that, Commissioner Cascaden, you're correct that it's gonna mean different things in different departments, but it's imperfect. But what we wanted was the same measure in all the departments, so Wilfredo spent a lot of time thinking through what could be the most useful. It's hard to come up with a measure that's gonna be the same across every department, but it's gonna be useful in places where there are fees in particular, or grants that they're trying to come up with it. Also, think about your HHH departments. If the amount of state funding goes down, the levy's gonna go up too. So
I just don't understand it as in performance measurements where we're setting targets that we're trying to achieve. The finance piece seems like it might fit for fees where we say we're going to try and collect 70 or 80% of the costs. We're going to try and recoup it with fees, but it doesn't seem to make sense where I'm more familiar, where the state says you're going to do this and we'll send you some of the money, but not all of the money
Yeah.
to get it done, you know, so I'm just trying to,
Well, this is an evolution. I'm trying to grow these scorecards in a way that makes sense. And where we started was it would be nice to have a financial measure that covers all departments. So I'm not saying we've arrived for sure. And we'll take your thoughts under advisement as we try to figure out, okay, maybe there's a better measure to put in here. Or maybe it doesn't need to be measured in some, but if you measure it, all, that there are these 4 perspectives, so even at the department level, you gotta have a financial measure.
Right.
And sometimes that's hard for departments to figure out, what am I measuring? Like think about Deborah's department, it's hard to figure out, what did she measure? Did she spend her training budget? It's hard. But I understand what you're saying. I don't have a perfect solution.
Commissioner Cascade, I would just add one more thing, which is that departments are not limited to only this measure, though. So if there is something else that really does make some sense for them to add in financial, then they certainly can do that as well and work with their controller. We actually had something here about revenue related to, not revenue, but changes that came about because of the legislative priorities that affected the county's finances. But of course, without any bonding bill, we found that we weren't particularly successful in that measure. So, so departments can add something more specific to them that is, relevant under financial as well. So if there are no changes to this scorecard, then this will come to you at the end of December in your packet, probably on consent, along with the budget and kind of all of the year-end documents, and then this will be our guiding document for 2023.
Okay.
And then I did want to just close with a quick strategic planning update. So the internal environmental scan and the input received from the Board of Commissioners, from executive management team, department heads, and then now all staff have had an opportunity to send representation to different meetings. That is complete, and that information is being summarized. The external environmental scan and the input is going to start yet this year, hopefully by November. And we're on track to complete the full strategic plan by the end of next year. While we are doing strategic planning, we'd like to pause adding any new board priorities for 2023, but Administrator Welsh and Executive Management Team will continue to provide updates here on any of the board priorities that will continue, or of course any other major projects happening across the county. Any other questions for me?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up, set appraised value and recommendation for sale of tax forfeited properties.
Hello, Commissioners. I want to make sure I can be heard good. We're here to set the appraised value of 5 foreclosed properties or parcels. Thanks, Claire. It's our duty to determine the value. Am I supposed to move? I need you to move the thing. I'm sorry. I don't know.
Way down at the
All right.
bottom.
It's
Way down at the bottom.
resolution or? No, I'm just it's not aligned very well.
Page 51.
Oh, can you just
Your
put me where
keyboard
it's supposed
hit
to be?
end, and then you can scroll up a little bit.
Okay.
It's way down
Thank
at the
you.
bottom. There we go.
Okay, can you move it? Yeah, thank you. Okay, so this is parcel, so we have 5 parcels and parcel number 2. This is parcel number 1. It is a vacant lot, and we do have some interest from the property owners on both sides. However, it's not a desirable piece of land. So you'll notice that staff has $100 on that for a property value. Property number 2 is a single-family home, and I've worked with Dave Dunn on this, and he thinks that this might be a desirable place for affordable housing. And so if you go to the next page on this slide, you'll see the costs associated with this parcel to date, and it shows that past due taxes are $11,000, almost $11,500, and how that's distributed. And the current taxes are due are $2,000. The next slide shows that inclusive of the advertising, the signage, and the special assessments as well as the mowing. And we have added up to $17,483. But at the very end, we added in another $360, and those are the fees that we expect for continual mowing until we can turn it over, because it's another 60 days. Okay?
So could the original owner pay us $17,843 and reclaim the property?
Mm-hmm.
When
Is
does
it
that
possibility?
ability expire? When,
60 days. After you guys perform this, they have 60 days.
So what you're proposing is the retrieval fee or the reclaim fee, not what we would look to recoup from the HRA.
Correct. This is what we propose to have the HRA, yes, purchase.
Then I think this is very different than what we talked about at the public.
At the PD meeting?
Yep, because our process in the past couple of years has been that we set a very low rate and know that you've incurred costs, but we set a low rate for the HRA to acquire the property. We've been looking at like $2,500 or $1,000 for an empty lot, not anything in this range, because our goal is to try and get the property redeveloped at the lowest cost possible.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is in contrast to the discussion I remember.
I misunderstood. I thought you wanted to see all the expenses associated with the parcel.
It's good to see the expenses, but I thought that our agreement was that we did not expect the HRA to pay that the county would assume those costs outside of the HRA.
Right. We did meet with Dave and the HRA and Pete and I, and he was comfortable with this number.
I
He
am
is
not.
a pass-through. Okay. So
And I thought that
at
was
the
pretty,
very end,
I thought that
you
was
have the
pretty
right.
clear at our physical development committee that at least two of us were not. One of us was, as I recall. So
At
I'm
the
not
very end, you
comfortable
have
with
the
that
right
amount.
to set the fee at whatever you guys suggest.
We had a process last year that I'd like you to look at where we had I'm trying to remember, it was a whole chart where we were looking at an HRA rate, and it was really in the $2,500 range for a rehab property, so that we can make it really affordable for the
For the first homes or whoever buys it.
right.
Yeah.
I mean, then essentially we're using general levy funds to subsidize this moving into.
Yeah, we're using general levy funds then to subsidize this foreclosure.
As compared to just
As opposed to
an
HRA
actual
funds.
expense.
As opposed to HRA funds where we know we never have enough supply or HRA funds to do.
I mean, it seems to me that we have plenty of HRA.
We do at the moment, but I think the policy process that we established a couple years ago was to really do a deep, deep discount of foreclosed properties so that they were very, very easy for one of the not-for-profits to.
Right. But I mean, I think this is deep discounted. I mean, it's $17,000 for a house that needs repairs, and Dave's saying, well, it's got a value well beyond it after the repairs.
It's $17,000 that they won't have to spend on repairs.
The discussion a month ago, property tax and records wanted to make a special account to when they do mowing, whatever they had to do, they wanted to get reimbursed, correct? And Sheila and I said, no. The idea was, we want affordable housing. We're not reimbursing one department over another. So the question is, why do we want to tack on extra dollar amounts, whatever department does whatever, with these homes?
But essentially, then it's PRL that's paying for affordable housing as compared to the HRA paying for affordable
Well,
housing.
basically it's a countywide.
I know, but I mean,
Yeah.
we have
But,
HRA for a
but
reason.
the message was they want to get reimbursed with a special account, and me and Sheila did not
We
agree
didn't
with
think
that.
that was the
That was not the goal.
Yeah. I mean, I could.
Yeah.
don't
And
wanna
there was a
bogart
difference
this,
of
but-
opinion.
I didn't have a problem with it. I think this is incredibly reasonable.
Well-
and it certainly folds easily into the affordable range. Nowhere near what we could sell it for.
But my question to this house is, this person has 60 days to buy it. If I was them, I'd buy it for 17,008 and sell it for 117,000. Why would they not do it? This is, I don't think this will happen because
Somebody will come through.
the former homeowner or somebody acquainted with the former homeowner goes, I'll put that much money up
Pay it off.
and pay it off to spin it or redo it. So it's not going to happen.
Okay, I'm gonna go to Pete quick.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, I think the goal for staff to bring it to first the Physical Development Committee and now today was
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you.
our goal from staff's perspective to bring it through the committee and now is to really be able to, and with Dave as well, is to be just upfront with what those costs are. In the past, that wasn't always spelled out, so our goal was to make sure that the board was aware of what those expenses are that do come out of the fund that PRL maintains.
All right, then that's new. Then that should be a separate line item on our agenda today if we're going to make a special account with the
There already
department.
is a line item.
So,
It already exists.
so we're seeing this, and we did not agree that physical development did this because all we're doing is taking money from one agency to another, back and forth. That's why now I'm hearing we want to do that. We're suggesting that.
Well, I think that is the question, and I think that that's mainly being able to be open about what those expenses are when we have these forfeited properties. That there are some that have very few expenses, some have very large expenses, and we just wanted to be open to what those are.
Well, that was a question about the Penz's landfill too and everything else. Who pays and who covers it? So that's a whole different item than today's what we're looking at here, if we want to go that direction.
So essentially, I mean, wouldn't it be smart of us to approve this at this price right now? Because if we're gonna discount it, we're just gonna make it more likely that it doesn't ever get into
Well,
affordable housing.
Mr. Chair, what we had a couple years ago, and I wish I could just recall, we had a chart. We had the auction price to the, if we're going to put it to auction, we had an HRA price, and then the HRA, the way it works, as I understand it, is any local unit of government can claim it first. So that then means that the HRA can look at that property and say, yep, we would pay, the $2,500. We think it's rehabable, and we'll pay the $2,500. If they say no, then it goes into the general open auction on a foreclosed property at the price that the public private property records have set. So what I'm trying to get to is back to where we have the three steps. We have a local unit of government can claim it. There's an HRA price, and then there's the price that we would put it at full auction on as a foreclosure sale. Knowing that you're now saying the foreclosure sale price could exceed your actual costs of maintaining it. But if the HRA picks it up and says this property can be rehabbed, then we really are saying we are supplementing through general county levy the cost of that property's maintenance for PRL.
Well, that's
So PRL, we should know how much PRL is spending, because you should be able to ask to have that hole filled in your budget.
It is a line item all by itself. It already exists.
So I think we need to know how much we're spending on these, but I don't think we want to, I'm still of the opinion that we want to make it very easy and very affordable and very quick to transfer these properties for rehab to one of our not-for-profits.
Oh, I also was here, and remember it's slightly different. Okay, is when we had that first discussion, it was, can we just immediately go to the nonprofits? Because we weren't sure legally we could do that. Ascertain that we could. I do never remember setting a floor price. Said it should be reasonable, affordable, to keep in affordable homes, but we didn't set a
Which
price.
conversation are you remembering, our most recent one or a couple of years ago?
A couple of years ago. I'm talking about when this whole thing started.
And we had two different prices at the time. So
And you say go for the lower price, but we didn't set a floor
Well, I
price.
actually
or
remember
a
Commissioner
cap or
Beer
anything.
making an amendment that
Whoa, whoa.
HRA could come in as a bid, so anyway.
We don't have minutes, we don't have recordings, go ahead.
All right, let's go to Heidi.
Mr. Dunn.
What are we trying to do here? I'm really
I'm
kind
really
of
confused.
messed up. What? Just tell me what we're trying to do.
Let me get to Heidi first.
Oh, I was just gonna say, Mr. Dunn may remember better, and he's online and prepared to comment.
All right, well, let's hear from Dave Dunn.
This is reasonable.
Yeah, good afternoon. Just wanted to provide a little bit of context. I know that we have had conversations ongoing with Mary and the PRL team on kind of really what I think amounts to as a policy question for all of you, and that is whether you want to use county levy to subsidize what those costs may look like to address the needs of affordable housing, or whether you would want the HRA or kind of that sale price to incorporate those costs. From a housing department perspective, we think that it's fair that we can cover those costs, but we also understand the other variables involved.
Dave, do you recall the conversation that we had a couple years ago, setting an HRA levy purchase price, an HRA price versus a foreclosure price in the common market, or the open market? Am I completely off?
Yeah, and I'm trying to frantically go into my keyboard and try to see where I can find that determination. But I do recall something of the sort where we did kind of have a different price level involved, but I can't find the specific, I think it was back in 2017, maybe, the last time we had properties, but I'd have to double check.
Okay, can I
It
ask?
wasn't that far. It wasn't that long ago.
Okay.
Maybe 2019.
Okay, we're gonna go to Jim.
What? I mean, I read our thing and I open my packet. We're setting appraised values and recommendation sale for property. Take the damn property, let's set the value, and let's go with it. What are we screwing around with all this policy bullshit for? I mean, you know, we've done this for years. We set it at $100. We set it at $1,000. What the hell are we doing here?
I think we're trying to decide what we set it at, but
Well, make a motion. Christ, we are farting around.
we haven't got through the list yet.
God damn it.
Hold on. All right, we'll get through the list.
We're starting to set policy here. Back to my previous thing. We had to spend a lot of money on Penn's property, but we gave some to the township for minimal price and other entities and we didn't ask for reimbursement. What we're asking here now is reimbursement for property records for things they put in. Even though 17,000 is very minor and it ain't gonna happen at 17,000, that's a deal for anybody to buy it. So we need to separate the two. Are we gonna reimburse in future tax sales money for cleanup, mowing, or whatever? Is that on all property now? Or what we pick and choose? That's our discussion
Yeah,
here.
well, that's a fair discussion. Can we pick and choose? I think we
Yes.
can pick and choose. I don't know that.
Well, we set the price, but
the price.
yes, we're gonna set the price.
Yep.
But we're picking and choosing now, all of a sudden on this one, property tax and records had so much money they put in. I agree with that. So we reimburse them for that amount on this property, and some others we don't, or some we do?
Never did before.
No, we didn't.
Okay,
Well, we
well,
shouldn't.
but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't on this one.
Well,
So
maybe
we can have that discussion.
Yes,
All right, so, all
yes.
right, so should we go through the list first, or should we decide on this one?
Let's set this aside, go through the list, and then
Okay.
hold on this because it is a broader policy discussion.
Yeah.
Because we're not asking for reimbursement of their expenses for the other properties that are coming up. So
Okay. On parcel one, it's $100. Okay. On some of these, it's about trying to get them off the county's books. So parcel two is the one in question. Parcel three is $100. Some of these are like around stormwater ponds, so the city of Rochester is interested. If it doesn't, if it's right. And then parcel four is $100 and parcel five is $100. Those are all, vacant small slivers. Okay, we anticipate that we may end up with parcel 5.
So I think what I'd like to do is entertain a motion for 1, 3, 4, 5, and then we'll discuss number 2. Does that seem fair? Okay,
Make a motion for them.
for 1, 3, 4, 5. Okay, we got a motion, a second, any discussion on those?
$100 a piece? Fine.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, let's hear something on 2.
So, Dave, if you're listening, one of those properties in that discussion was on, I'm pretty sure, Sunrise in southeast Rochester. It could have been Sunset, because Sunrise and Sunset are an intersection. But that was one of the properties that was on there. And the discussion is that I think that the county turned it down, but they asked either First Homes or Habitat for Humanity if they wanted that one. And that was part of the discussion as well, that HRA had first choice. If they didn't want it, then it went to one of our groups of people that build those low-income houses. And as I recall, that was set at $2,500, but I can't remember.
That's my recollection.
I can't remember for sure. But the idea is exactly what Matt and Sheila are talking about, that it was set low for HRA if they wanted it as first choice.
Okay, Jim.
Mr. King, I got a question. If we set this property at $17,000, we set it at $1. Does the property owner do they still have a redemption period, or are they? So the property owner, we set it at a number. They still, even though if the property owner wants to come in and pay whatever we set the floor is, that trumps the HRA getting it. Is that correct?
They get the first
Okay,
option.
they get
to
first
purchase.
dibs on it. I don't
For
know if
60
dibs
days.
is the correct term anymore or not. I'm unsure anymore. So anything I say.
As I recall, Mr. Cadan, maybe you recall, we had two prices. We had an HRA price and we had the public price.
We did.
And so,
But
if we follow what we did before, you could set this at 17,000, which is probably too low because it's not. But anyway, whatever. And then we'd have the HRA price, which is, I'm recalling the same thing, about $2,500, because we wanted to encourage rehab and make it affordable for our not-for-profits to, just to reduce financial barriers for them to rehab the property. So you could do both, Commissioner Beer. You could set a price for the public and you could set a price for the HRA. That's what we did a couple of years ago. And you amended it at the time, I remember, because we had a kind of heated debate, saying that the HRA could come in and make an offer.
The question is, though, most of those things are non-controversial. If this, which looks like an adequate home, if we set it at $2,500,
For the HRA.
does the owner get to come in and pay
Oh,
$2,500?
because that's an HRA price only.
Yes.
Why?
Because we
That's
choose
not
to do it that
fair.
way.
We just set, we got a value of 17,863.26. That's what's owed. Now, we're gonna set the price at 2,500 and we're gonna say the owner doesn't get that price? If we're willing to sell it for 2,500, why doesn't the owner, Tom, does the owner have a right?
you could set it at 2,500, but I think the past practice has been when the owner has to come in and purchase it, they cover the cost that PRL has incurred to date in order to purchase the property
I
back.
understand that, but
So-
could they challenge that and say, you're offering it to HRA for 2,500, I'll give you $2,500 and I'll take the house back?
It seems patently, I agree with Ken, it seems patently unfair. We're trying to keep people in their homes, okay? I don't know this person from Adam, but if you say, okay, you got to pay the $17,000, or the back fees or whatever, which is fair. But if you don't do that, we're going to sell it to the HRA because we want to have affordable housing for $2,500. That seems, that doesn't seem right in my mind.
Keep in mind also, typically PRL has worked for years often in some cases with these homeowners with repayment plans and often they'll fail on the repayment plans, and it's often only after we've tried repeatedly that we even get to the point where the properties become tax forfeited.
I get that, but I
So-
mean, if this thing is, I mean, this looks like Ken says, if it was a chunk of land and the house was like 2 boards like this, and the roof was falling in, it'd be one thing. This thing looks habitable to me. 17,000 bucks. I would put it at that. And the people, somebody's going to redeem it. Their neighbors are going to find out about it, and they'll go, "I'll give you the 17 grand." Hell, I'll give them the 17 grand. Turn around, flip it. Although I think there's some legal issues there with the commissioner doing it.
I just see that we're funding housing through the PRL, and I don't think that's our method to fund housing. We have an HRA to fund housing through. So,
Dave has another comment.
Dave.
Yeah, hello. I have been able to pull up some additional information here. So we have done this 2 times previously, at least in the last several years. So we did this in 2017, and in 2017, the lots that we sold or homes that needed to be demoed sold for approximately $1,000 to $2,500. And then there was one property on 18th Street Southwest in 2017 that was a rehab that we sold to Habitat for $20,000. In 2021, which I think that's what Commissioner Cascaden was referring to, the homes that we sold for $2,500 were demolitions, and then we did sell one home for $15,000, and that was a rehab. So that's just kind of some past history for how we've addressed this at the pass-through amount to the HRA.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's good information.
Try a different take. Have you been in this house? Is any of your
Staff has,
been in
I
there?
have not.
I mean, what's it like inside?
They value it at $189,000.
So it's a habitable house.
Yes.
Fine. Set it at 17,000. It'll be
Okay,
gone.
I'll entertain a
Nobody's
motion.
gonna- Yeah, so I'll say set it at, what do you want, 17,000?
17,843.
It'll be gone.
17,843.
So, Mr. Chair, and can staff review the process for foreclosed properties? Because as I recall, and again, obviously from Mr. Dunn has demonstrated my memory isn't complete, there is a first right to claim by a local unit of government, right?
The homeowner has 60 days. And then it can
Only
go to
60 days. Okay. And then there's a first right by a local unit of government to say, we're interested in that property.
Right.
We set the price for that. So that's where the HRA would qualify. And then only then, if the homeowner doesn't claim and no local unit of government claims, then it goes to public auction. And then the floor that you set becomes the base for the public auction. So the neighbor can't come in and buy this right now. The homeowner could reclaim it for 17, or we could say 17 is what we want to, if the HRA wants to claim it for this price, the HRA thinks is fine, and they want to claim it and make it available for rehab. We could set that as the price in the HRA. It would then go into the affordable housing rehab program.
If the 60 days passes.
If what?
If the 60 days pass without the
60.
homeowner, yes. Yes, and that's what we anticipate. Dave.
And so you've talked to Mr. Dunn, and there was interest in this property as a potential rehab.
Correct.
And so the problem we're having is my being difficult about the sale.
Renee, what?
And my colleague here
Goes without saying.
agreeing that we don't really want to make property records whole.
Well, that's what his words exactly.
That was not my words exactly. No,
On at that end of the dais, or whatever we say, make a damn motion and set a number, and then I'll second it. Just make a motion, and then we'll vote on it. Please?
okay.
I'm tired of this.
It's not going to happen at 70,000. If we set it at 70,000, the homeowner doesn't buy it. It'll be back to us to give it the opportunity to HRA at a lower price.
If we want.
If we want.
Correct.
So
We can have that
phase
argument
2.
too.
So there's no problem with that, but you're not going to get it. I'm telling you, somebody will pay it off for 17,000. So
So
Yeah,
I'll
motion?
move that.
17,843.26.
We'll second it.
All right, what's the motion?
What's the
Four
motion?
8326.
843.26.
Ken's motion and Jim's second.
I don't know what the motion is
To set the prices listed, 17,843.26.
for public auction,
For public.
That's,
for the owner to reclaim.
Yes.
that'll come back to us if it doesn't get
And if
reclaimed.
the owner doesn't reclaim, it comes back and we can set
Do
the
this
price
fight.
for the HRA.
Yes. Which will be,
No?
that's the legal.
Normally you do it all
Got
at
you a
once.
better one.
Right,
So I would, can we amend that
Hang on.
motion?
I want to get,
Normally it's all at one time.
right.
all right,
You think she talks fast.
Sheila, you are correct in the fact that we used to set two prices. And we still do the HRA, we set an HRA price, what we're offering the HRA, and then we set if it goes to public auction. So typically we set two prices. The homeowner has, we can ask Lisa for the process for sure, but the homeowner has the opportunity to redeem the property based. Okay, so once it gets past that point, HRA, we set a price and we say, if we're gonna sell it, if the HRA is interested in the property, we can sell it to the HRA for this price. If the HRA is not interested in the property, then we do the public auction price. So you could approve
Yeah.
two prices.
Okay.
And the 189 that I actually did go out and look at the property. Jim had the question of who was Ryan Kraft, and I went and looked at the property. It's, I mean, it needs some work, but it's habitable. Someone has been living there up until the time they weren't. Well, they moved out. I mean, there's no one living there, but it's livable.
I am gonna start taping this.
You
I
should.
think I can sell this on YouTube.
You should.
motion and second, so if we're going to make an amendment, guys got to accept the amendment.
I've got to understand the process.
So if the HRA, if you set it, that as an HRA price, and they decide that they don't want it, then we'd have to come back and we'd have to do a public auction price.
And the public auction price would be more at the appraised value.
Yes. Well, it'd
Okay.
be at the appraised value, yeah.
So
Yeah.
Wait,
Second, you have to get him to accept the amendment then, right? He
yeah,
motioned
so
second.
I would be moving to amend, right?
Okay.
Okay.
okay, go ahead.
Would you please restate the current motion so I.
Current motion
Current-
is to set it for the Ken, I'm sorry. You go ahead.
17,843.26.
For the redemption value
For
for
the
the
redemp,
owner.
for the value that we place on the house.
You want the HRA price.
And the
This is
HRA.
the HRA.
That's the HRA price. You'd have to set the
Why?
HRA price.
Why, if this goes 60 days and nothing happens,
It comes,
you can't say 2,500 for the HRA? We can't change that?
yeah.
My concern,
Okay.
right, if we have two prices, let's say we have an inside price for 2,500 HRA, 17,843.26 in order for the owner to redeem it. The owner does not redeem it. Why can't that come back to us and say
think
now
it's
for
the
the HRA, it's
redemption piece.
$2,500?
Lisa, do you want to explain to them how the redemption is done? Yeah, Lisa will actually tell you the redemption piece, because that's already set.
No, how it truly happens is we set two prices. We set
Can
an
you pull the microphone down, please?
HRA price and the sale price, auction sale price today. We set them both at the same time. We run our 60 days. The 60 days is for the authorities to buy it, which would be your HRA. Then after that, if they want it, we deed it to them. The owner has the right to redeem up until the deed, and that's it. They have to pay all back taxes, penalty, interest, plus any taxes we wrote off as exempt this year for being in for forfeiture.
Within 60 days.
Yes.
What
Within
this,
60
oh,
days.
No, not within the 60 days from the, so HRA can take their 60 days, but if they take us, and then they have 6 months to buy.
No, I'm talking about the owner, the original
No,
owner.
I'm just the owner, and that's what I'm saying. They have 60
could you
days.
get into the microphone, please?
Okay, sorry. 60 days for HRA. Then if they say, yes, we want it, they have 6 months to make good on that deed, to buy it. HRA. Owner has up until the time that the deed to redeem.
Okay.
Until we transfer title, they have the right.
So if the HRA, if we set a price for the HRA at $5,000, and the HRA says, yes, we'll take it. The owner then has still has
More than 60 days.
6
Till the
months,
deed-
till the
they
time the
have a
deed is
title.
closed, the owner can come in and say, I will pay all of my back taxes and I will reclaim
You
the
got it.
property. Okay.
Exactly.
What are
And
the
so
back
today you're asking us to set a price for the HRA and to set a price if it goes to auction.
Correct.
And your auction price is that you've appraised it at is $189,000 approximately.
That's what we usually don't set the auction price at the appraised value. We usually set it for what we think we can sell it at auction, so it gets off our books.
And do you have that number for this property?
I don't know.
But my question still remains,
Yes.
is if we set something lower, 2,500, 5,000 for HRA.
Yep.
It goes past the 60 days. They say, yeah, we want it. Anytime before the title, can the owner, the original owner, come in and say, I'll give you the 5,000? Why? Legally, I'm serious.
No,
the HRA
Serious
the
question.
seller
What-
can
legally,
only,
they can. I would think
No.
they could challenge that.
No, the owner can only repurchase it for back taxes, interest, penalty, and
That's in statute. That's
Yes.
state law.
Yes.
So wait, just now I am screwed up. Okay, so the owner, so we set it at,
If you
say
set-
$2,000, because 2,000, it's got a lot of zeros, it's easy for me. We set it for the
Yes,
HRA.
yep.
And we set the public auction at $2,000 too. Just for sake of argument.
You
Just
just
for
gave me a
sake
heart
of-
attack, okay, but yes.
Well, I mean, it's an auction. Somebody would probably buy it for more than that. But, okay, so we do that. Okay, so now the HRA says, I want it. They got on the 59th day, they said, yeah, we're going to take it. So
Yeah.
they say, I'm going to want it. And now the owner comes toddling in on 5 months and 30 days later. There's one more day left. The owner comes toddling in and says, no, I decided I'm going to take it. They got to pay the $22,000 plus all the back taxes,
No,
or all the back
they-
taxes and fees?
They have to pay back taxes, fees, and any taxes that, so the property went exempt this year because it's in forfeiture. It has to pay what the taxes would have been, plus any penalty and interest for this year as well.
For the sake of round numbers, if the scenario I said that happened, the HRA took it on the 59th day, and then the property owner took it to the
Yeah.
last possible day, round numbers, what would
I'd
that?
say with this year's taxes and back taxes, you're looking at, he'd get 15,000.
Okay, so 15, 16,000, that owner could have it back on the last day.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, I'll amend my, oh no, you had the motion.
But
Ken.
then,
Amended.
yeah, just one more question.
Okay.
And the auction price that we set is irrelevant to the owner.
Correct.
If the owner comes in and pays.
Yes, the auction price is really, we try to get at a price that would be, obviously, we want to get it back on the tax rolls. And so it's not going to be, 100% appraised value. It's going to be somewhere between this HRA and the
Got it.
appraised.
Wouldn't you though? But just I got another question.
Sure.
We had we had that. I mean, you whatever you set for an auction price is pretty immaterial, isn't it? Because we had that property down in Calmer Township on 105, I believe it was.
Yes, lovely
And-
property.
And that was a nice property, and I think we set it at $100 or something like that. 'Cause
No.
well, we had it pretty low, but then people watch that stuff, and you always get two interested parties, and they float it up to a market value. I mean,
Right,
generally.
Reasonable.
Yeah. So if we
I
set
think
it
we
at
had 70 on that. Wasn't that the house that?
yeah.
Yeah, I think we had 70 on that. That went good, and there was, it bid up, you're right.
But I mean, so if we set this at 2,000, it's just a starting price. Nobody's going to get it for $2,000.
No, but I'd be afraid they would.
Okay, my question is, it's really come down, do we charge the HRA? If the property owner buys it,
Mm-hmm.
whatever minimum price, doesn't he have to pay for the mowing and all the extra stuff we
He
did?
should have to, I think so, Tom, does he have to pay
Yeah,
upkeep?
he's gonna pay it.
Yeah,
They have to
yeah, I think
cover our
so.
costs that we
Fees.
incurred while we maintained it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so whatever we set it at say 15,000, the property owner's gotta pay all the fees, the property tax. The only question is there, do we wanna make the HRA pay
At
that?
this point,
PRL.
the only discussion is, what do we agree to set the price for the HRA, knowing that if the owner comes back, they're gonna pay 17,843 or whatever, including today's fees or late fees, and then if it goes to auction, it will be a different price that we know will get bid up, because if it's a good house, somebody's gonna want it, rehab it, and sell it.
Right.
So those are the things. That's finally clarified in my mind. Now, I said 17,843, you can vote me down, okay, and then set another price for,
Okay,
So your motion would make the HRA pay that price?
Yes.
Yeah.
We got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is that 3?
Yeah. 3, I think.
Opposed?
Aye.
A second. What did you vote, Steph?
I voted, the first, I voted
For it.
for it.
That's 4. That's the price.
4 to 3.
17,843.
We set at 17,000 for the
So
HRA.
the HRA will have to pay the fees, yeah.
Okay, that passed. That was simple.
Why-
Just wait till we got 4 new commissioners.
Right, yeah. I don't know.
We have a HRA levy.
That's fine.
Okay.
Well,
Mary, is there anything else from you? You sure?
You pick and choose which product.
If you don't mind,
Sure.
could we set an auction price in the event those other 2 things don't follow through?
Okay, so
I missed what you just
she
said.
wants an auction price. Who wants to set an auction price?
Motion to set the auction price at 70,000.
One.
What?
70.
70?
Get a second.
Second.
Set it at 70 if it's a $189,000 house.
Well, higher than that.
If it goes to auction, it'll go higher.
Starting.
I mean, the HRA is going to buy it.
I got a
anyway, so-
motion.
We got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Aye.
You better take a roll call, baby.
Matt, what were you?
I said aye for that one.
Okay, I think it's 4-3 again.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4. That's 4-3. It's not going to get to an auction anyways. HRA already said they're going to buy it. Okay. Anything more?
No.
Okay.
Thank you for the entertainment.
Yeah.
More
Good
frequently.
thing we're not dealing with any controversial issues today.
I come back in.
Okay, board and committee reports. Matt.
No,
Sheila.
Oh, yes. I attended the
Full
State
report.
Community Health Advisory Council meeting for a couple days last week in St. Cloud, and Denise was there for part of it. And I just wanted to remind you that we have it in our legislative agenda to support legislatively the funding that's going to be needed to really modernize and transform public health. And it's a really important thing for us to get behind. And a couple of us are going to the, before we see you next, we're going to be going to the District 9 meeting where we'll be also advocating for the full state funding for community corrections. They've now agreed on the formula. The legislative committee met this morning and it was just like this afternoon's meeting, very tumultuous. I don't know what's with all of us today. But we hopefully have now legislative priorities that Jennifer can make sense of. and we will be able to carry forward into subsequent meetings.
Okay.
Okay. Greg.
No, well, other than AMC and both Micah are really working hard to try to figure out their legislative agendas, which fortunately we have people that are on the board that are involved in those groups and try to get our priorities inside both Micah and AMC priorities. Thanks.
Good.
Micah was always informative, and they had Senator Nelson who tweaked a little bit and said there is a small outside minimal chance of a session after the election. Nobody's going to hold their breath on that one. And then just EMS, which I've talked about forever, the funding challenges still remain. A major funding source is seatbelt revenue. Unfortunately, that's gone down from about 200,000 lots of years ago to 40,000 this year. So it just continues to be operate on a shoestring and a wing and a prayer. So, I mean, just if you get a chance to talk, that's what we're talking about, just to put in some sustained, appropriate funding to allow these people to survive out there. The ambulance services volunteers, so important. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Jim.
I got about an hour and a half pass.
Okay, Stephanie. Okay, I'll leave with a short quote from Alphonse Karr, 19th century French critic, who said, we can complain because rose bushes have thorns, or rejoice because thorns have roses.
I can't argue with that.
Half full.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
The thorn or
Second.
a rose?
We're adjourned.
Aye.
You have to watch.